Okay, I think we're in. All right. Elizabeth and Joseph, hi. Apparently you guys don't come to class anymore, so this is for you. Charlotte, do something with that. Oh, but first, will you, put this up there?
Put what?
This, over here, right here on the board. So, just record it so you can see it. Here. We're handing the camera around the room, guys. This is what happens when you don't come to class. All right. So, I'm thinking you're getting absolutely none of that. No, more or less. Okay. Richard III, Act 1, Scene 3, number 7 question. Act 4, Scene 4, number 9. Act 4, Scene 4, number 10. A list of all 5 things, please. Act 4, Scene 4, number 11. Act 4, Scene number 12, another list. Act 5, Scene 3, number 12. These are your questions. Please do them all. Please write the question and the answer and type them and send them to me. Okay, Charlotte, back to you. Okay, and those are, of course, from the Colby Medieval Shakespeare book. So we're talking about various things like that. Okay. Now, good. Where was I?
Ooh, did you just show them the answers?
Maybe, for just a second. But they won't, yeah.
You can go
good
back.
Luck with that, guys.
You can pause it.
You can pause it. Okay. The first thing that I want to say is I asked somebody who Richmond was and nobody knew, so now I'm like a little freaked out. So we're going back to the table of contents. Not the table of contents. What is this?
Okay.
Characters in the life of Richard III. Or in the play Richard III. This is the chart of the royal relations of England. Okay? Where the heck is your proper one?
I don't know. I thought it was in my bag, but I couldn't find it.
Okay, well, as fascinating as that is, we're moving on. All right.
It was in my bag. I'm sorry. I didn't
Okay,
read that.
sorry. Peace, love, happiness. Right, okay. Yeah. Okay, so check this out. Here we have the little character sketchy thing. So if everyone take a look, please. Look at the top level, Edward III, all right? One of the children of Edward III, we got several people here. We got Edmund, Duke of York. We got John of Gaunt, Duke of Lancaster. We have Edward the Black, Prince of Wales. So what's happening in Shakespeare is that we have this, Richard III is this fourth part of there's 2 tetralogies. Tetralogy obviously meaning what? An ology, which is tetra, which meaning what? Not tri, but tetra.
4.
Yeah, 4, okay. So these 2 4-part history cycles, these 2 tetralogies. Richard is the last of the plays of one of the tetralogies. And this is all about England and how England gets back to a place where England doesn't suck anymore. Because what's happened is they have gone corrupt and problematic. There's a whole series of things that has happened which to make everything corrupt and problematic. Basically, what has happened immediately is, now you could see this line of people all related to each other, all have claims on the throne. What I want you to look down towards all the way to the bottom, and what you see is Henry VIII, right? Henry 5, 6, 7, 8. Henry VIII is the father of who? Who is Henry VIII the father of? Elizabeth, as in Queen Elizabeth, as in like the one who came after Queen Mary and becomes like Elizabeth the Great, the greatest of the English queens, who's very responsible for like squishing down Catholicism very thoroughly. Henry VIII, of course, is the one that formally separates from the church based on his desire to get a divorce from his Spanish princess wife. And then what happens subsequently is the separation of the Church of Rome and the formation of the Church of England, which is a really, really big stinking deal.
Which divorce was that?
What, baby?
Which divorce was
His first divorce ever, okay? And from his really lovely Spanish princess wife, who the people really adored. But of course she didn't have a son. He wanted a son, and he was done with not having a son. It is his daughter by her, Queen Mary, that is the Catholic queen after Henry dies, and his daughter by the other wife, the one he divorces, the Spanish princess, and marries, I believe, Anne Boleyn. And it's Anne Boleyn's daughter, Elizabeth, who will become the greatest of England's queens ever, thus showing the utility of having male heirs, which is basically not as big a deal as you thought it was. But anyway, Henry VIII, who is Elizabeth's father. So Shakespeare is writing about the ancestors of his current monarch, Queen Elizabeth, who has a tight hold over London, and all this is going on in Shakespeare's London. Look above that. Henry VIII's parents are Elizabeth of York, the one that Richard wants to marry. Remember, he wants to marry 2 people. He wants to marry Anne. He marries her, and then she mysteriously disappears from the screen. Implication, he murders her. And then he tries to woo Elizabeth of York through her mother. All right, he goes to Elizabeth Woodville, her mother, and says, "Convince your daughter to marry me." And they have that wonderful back and forth in which he's like, "I swear by the sun," and she's like, "The sun that is ashamed to to shine upon you because you're such a slimy toad." I swear by my father. Oh, you mean the one that you dishonor by your very presence? I mean, they have this wonderful back and forth. So Henry VIII's mom is Elizabeth of York, and Henry VIII's dad is Henry VII. Now look next to Henry VII, down here, where I've got it highlighted. Next to Henry VII, we have Henry Tudor, Earl of Richmond. Later, King Henry VII of England. He is the guy who was fighting against Richard at the end. All right, Henry VII, Henry Tudor, Earl of Richmond. He is founding the House of Tudor and uniting the warring houses of York and Lancaster. Okay. He marries Elizabeth of York. He is a Lancastrian claimant to the throne. He marries the last daughter of the House of York that's available for marriage. And he unites York and Lancaster and then puts an end. You may be making notes at this time. That's totally possible. Thank you, John Paul. He puts an end to this strife, right? This like civil strife that has run its course in England in this War of the Roses that we talked about last time. York versus Lancaster, all right? So, in the York versus Lancaster universe, Y versus Lan, right? York versus Lancaster. They are in this mess, all right, because of all these claimants to the throne. But for Shakespeare, they did not get here accidentally. This is all about virtue, all right? This is why Richard is the last of the fourth play of this tetralogy of Shakespeare's about the histories. The history plays are two separate tetralogies telling the whole history of England. Basically, there's a big mess. So let's talk a little bit about the big mess. I just wanted to sort of clarify for you in this thing who everybody is. So the guys at the end, that's Henry Tudor. We call him Henry, we call him Tudor, we call him Richmond because he's the Earl of Richmond. He arrives, and then everybody goes over to his side, and then Richard's fighting against him, and then Richard loses, and there's that whole my kingdom for a horse situation. And then Henry Tudor marries Elizabeth of York, uniting the houses of York and the House of Lancaster to get a legitimate new house. The House of Tudor, which is the one that is the great Queen Elizabeth, is a Tudor queen, and she is on the throne during the time of Shakespeare. All right? Is everybody clear on this? What's happening? This is super important. He needs to justify his current political status of England, but he also needs to show like lots of sort of moral stuff, and he's not making it up. For Shakespeare, the moral universe and like the political universe are one and the same, okay? And if you are going to be in favor of the common weal of the people's common good, then you are going to be like morally upright and politically successful. Richard is doomed for failure because Richard, at the end, what do all the ghosts say to Richard? There's two sets of ghosts. Remember, one more of these parallel structures we have. Clarence is visited by ghosts, and he repents. Buckingham is visited by ghosts, and he repents. Is it ghosts that visit Buckingham? Maybe he just has a whole wonderful repentance speech about today is All Souls Day, and like now I'm remembering all the souls of the people that I helped kill, and I'm repenting. All right, today is my body's doomsday, he says. We'll read some of that today. It's a really, really good line. But at the end, all these ghosts come to Richard, and then they come to Henry. And it's one of the most brilliant staging things in like all of medieval theater. There's actually a stage, and Richard is on one side with his guys, and he's like got a little couch to lie down on, little pillows and stuff. And there's like people behind him. And then Henry's on the other side. So they make on the stage the two camps. The camp of Richard and the camp of Henry. They put them up side by side with just a little divider down the front so that the audience can see both sides. It's a brilliant piece of staging. The ghosts come out of everywhere, and they visit Richard, and they condemn him. And what do they say to him? What do all the ghosts say to Richard? And they say lots of different stuff. What's the thing they all say that's the same? They curse him, and they say what? Die. But what before you die, do what? Dying isn't enough.
Suffer.
Suffering helps, but it's not quite enough. How do you go to hell? Who goes to hell? People who what? Not just sin. We all sin and we all get forgiven if we ask for it, right?
Are damned.
People who are damned. How do you get damned? If you kill yourself, why is that such a big deal for the church? What are you guilty of? The sin of? I mean, obviously, despair is that the ghosts say to him two things: despair and die. Despair and die. They want him to be dead, and they want him to be damned forever. And the only way to be damned forever is to be guilty of the sin of despair. Richard has to believe that he himself is not even worthy of repentance. Not even God can forgive him. And by the end, I would argue that he does. All right? So all the ghosts come to Richard and say, despair and die. And then all the ghosts come to Henry and say, sleep well, get up, fight hard, work, let's go, come on, bring it on, man. Like, let's fix this problem. Let's get this England back, let's change the pace here, let's move on. So the ghosts have this double effect again. There's all of this doubling within the screen, all right? Richard and Lady Anne, Richard and like Mother Elizabeth. There's all these predictions. Queen Margaret, the old queen, she's like 5 kings ago kind of queen. She gives predictions and she gives curses that just come cursing constantly, and it all comes true. At a certain point, Buckingham is like, I guess the curses of Queen Margaret are coming true, and I must call her a prophetess, like right before he dies, right? So there's all these curses and things happening. There's all these doubling of structures. But what I want you to understand is, for these two tetralogies are these like dramatization, they're like a chronicle of England's fall into corruption and usurpation and tyranny, and they have to get out of it. England fell into corruption, usurpation, and tyranny. Shakespeare thinks anyway. I would say by the death of somebody not like reckoned here. Here he is. Richard II. Okay, Edward, that comes from Edward the Black Prince of Wales. There's this king here, Richard II. Richard II had to be overthrown. It was kind of like a little bit necessary, but he thinks of it as sort of England's like original sin. All right. So ever since then, England has been in this well of like corruption and usurpation and tribulation. Right. So we need to get out of this, and that this brings evil to the people. If you have a disordered, disassociated monarchy, it brings evil to the people. It brings the House of York and the House of Lancaster fighting against each other. It brings all the evils of civil war. We need to get out of the civil war by finding and like returning a proper claimant to the throne, right? So we're going to have corruption and usurpation and tribulation, followed by expiation and redemption. England's going to go down, and then it's going to suffer. Under Richard, it suffers terribly, okay? And Richard basically, he's like the scourge of God. He cleans house. He kills everybody, all right? It clears the way. I mean, because he wants to get rid of everybody who would prevent him from being on the throne, right? And in so doing, he kind of wipes out every claimant to the throne from the houses of York and Lancaster, with the exception of Elizabeth, the girl that he wants to marry, and Henry, who's overseas, who has good sense. He flees. Henry, Earl of Richmond, flees. So at the end, when Richard is overthrown, those last two can get together, and we can have a new dynasty, the House of Tudor. We can return. There can be redemption for England. Sin, corruption, and tyranny. Whenever you go against the common good, this is what is going to happen to you as a leader: sin, corruption, and tyranny. So we fall into sin and corruption, tyranny, and then we are that is followed by expiation, which is like payment for sin, and by redemption. All right. So the deposing of Richard III, or Richard II, is England's like fall, essentially, for Shakespeare. You guys don't have to really worry about that. And so that is kind of results in an age of rebellion and civil war that just bedevils the nation, and everybody is really sad, and the whole thing's really messed up. And then there's this temporary reprieve in what I would call the kind of short and glorious rule of Henry V, who is like one of the plays of the tetralogy is Henry V. You may remember Henry V. He's like the super virtuous king, but by the time he conquers France and unites the realms of France and England, like he doesn't live very long, and then his son's rule is overturned by bad management. There's a wonderful line of Shakespeare of whose estate Henry V's son, Henry VI, right? Henry VI, in infant bands, born king of France and England, did this king succeed. Of whose estate so many had the managing, but they lost France and made his England bleed. So that is like one of the lines from the play Henry V. So other than Henry V, who was like a bright spot in the midst of this big mess, the rest of it is messed up until we can get back to redemption. We need redemption. We need expiation for sin and redemption. This is a moral universe for Shakespeare. The histories they're not just about like good and bad individual actions of a king. It's about the salvation of the nation of England, and it's very much involved. Okay. So after Henry V, right, there's this deeper descent into chaos, and then this climax is in the rise to power of this Richard III, who's kind of like the scourge of God. He's kind of like an archdemon, is what I would say about Richard. If you think of the Antichrist, Richard kind of has some Antichrist vibes. He's super evil. His motives are evil, and he seduces us. He talks to us in an aside, constantly. He constantly uses the asides, right? So he expresses one motive, and then he turns aside to the audience and says, but of course, that's not really going to happen, because this is what I'm going to do. He seduces us, and he seduces the rest of them, and he kills everyone, right? There's really a kind of archdemon thing going on here. Or in a different way, because archdemon's kind of a really old-fashioned sort of language, he's kind of an antichrist figure. All of the curses of all of the different people who curse him, like, they come back and they happen. So this is kind of what's happening with Richard. And he seduces them, he seduces us, and he's fascinating, he's witty, he's interesting, he's super courageous on the battlefield and very effective as a warrior. And even when he's doing something evil, he's constantly murmuring aside to us, like we're his personal confidant. But I won't do that, I'll do this different thing. So it's very arresting for the audience. You're fully involved. Even though you know that he's an absolute slimeberry, you still are kind of on his team a little bit, because he's so kind of seducing. He's so fascinating as a person. He's so much, his language, he's so much fun in his language. He just plays with everybody. Everything has like 18 different, there's like double entendres and triple entendres and just all kinds of different stuff. There's some lines of Richard, I was reading somebody last night that was saying, like that line, "My Kingdom for a Horse," it's got it's like 21 levels of literary devices in it or something. There's it's just crazy. It's one of it, the most important is mimesis, which we'll talk a little bit about. But he's a remarkable character. So let's get into a little more of the language. Let me see here. Right. I guess we'd say this. The redemption of England is when Richard is overthrown, right? And killed. So then England is reborn under Henry VII, Henry Tudor, and Elizabeth of York, uniting the houses of York and Lancaster. Then their son is Henry VIII, and then Henry VIII's daughter is Elizabeth the Great, who is queen during Shakespeare's time. So this is like the rebirth of England under the Tudor line. It's united, and then the descendants are ruling properly, or whatever. At least that's the story. Another element here that is happening with Richard is that he is ugly. There is a way in which Shakespeare's kind of playing with this sort of ancient, kind of almost Neoplatonic idea of the physicality. So the physical ugliness of Richard represents what? John Paul, what would you say about the physical ugliness of Richard?
His evil nature.
Yeah, to a certain degree. But also, there's a way in which Shakespeare kind of turns that on his head. So you would think, remember even going back to the ancient Hebrews, a physical deformity was meant to symbolize kind of a curse of God, right? So you would say that there was a notion that the problems of the parents alighted on the children in the forms of curses or the forms of birth defects or something like that. Even illegitimacy, that kind of a status. Shakespeare then, he turns this on its head though. So Richard is like that, but there's all these other characters in Shakespeare, and we'll read some, I believe in Macbeth as well, where illegitimacy actually isn't illegitimate, right? He says, despite my birth, I'll do this. I'll act with justice. I'll act with morality. I'll behave in this way. The idea that choice and not status, not birth, is what determines the morality of a character and the salvation of a person is all through Shakespeare. But Richard, with every choice that he makes, is confirming that exterior corruption, that exterior ugliness. That he's saying his outward sign is being reflected by his interior sign, but it's choice. He is corrupt on the externally corrupted, and he is making every choice he makes in his life is to make himself more and more and more interiorly corrupted. Does that make sense to everybody? So it's not I'm an ugly person, therefore I must be an evil person. It's more I'm an ugly person who has the possibility of being an evil person or a good person, and every step I take is towards the confirmation of my exterior sign. Just to sort of prove to God, you made me this way, I'm going to really drive it home, right? I'm going to be as evil and as awful as I can be to confirm what you see on the exterior. So it's like using this old-fashioned kind of symbolism, but also it kind of is almost contradicting that and saying it's his choice. Richard is choosing every time. I find that really, really fascinating. Okay. So let's look at some of the text lines. Let's look at Lady Anne of Richard, Act 1, Scene 2. Culminating ultimately in I will have her, but will not keep her long, which is one of those devastating asides to the people that Richard gives. So if everybody could join me in Act 1, Scene 2. Okay. So, Which was the thing that hit you hardest about Richard and Lady Anne in Act 1, Scene 2? For Maria, it was the hedgehogs, I believe. Or is that later? Is that between him and Queen Elizabeth when she calls him a hedgehog?
No, that's Anne.
Which is
No, what
just...
hits me even harder is how stupid Anne is.
It's a little difficult to handle sometimes. It's a little problematic. Let's go with Act 1, Scene 2. Enter Richard, Duke of Gloucester. So they're carrying the corpse, right? And he's like, okay, let's stop with the corpse for just a minute, and I want to talk to you, all right? And she has just done this in the previous page, all right, Act 1, Scene 2 in the very beginning. She's just given this big speech, and she's cursed Richard, all right? Cursed is the hand that made these holes. She's talking about the holes in the body. I'm on Act 1, Scene 2, line 20-ish. 9:15-ish. Oh, cursed be the hand that made these holes. Cursed the heart that had the heart to do it. So cursed the man whose heart had the heart to do this thing, which is one of those wonderful Shakespearean lines, heart, heart, hand, hand, holes, holes. You feel like the rhythm of the, using alliteration and assonance, he's bringing the text kind of home to you there. Curse the blood that let this blood from hence. Once more, double structure. Cursing the blood. Whose blood? The blood who helped this person to let this blood. What does it mean to let blood? Let it do what? How are they letting the blood?
Flow.
Let it flow. In other words, make holes to let it flow out of. Okay? More direful hap betide that hated wretch that makes us wretched. Once again, wretched. There's this doubling structure of the line. All right, so many times. Heart, heart, hand, hand, blood, blood, wretched. More direful hap betide, I'm now on line 19, that hated wretch that makes us wretched by the death of thee, thee meaning the guy on the burial load thingy there. Then I can wish to wolves, to spiders, toads, or any creeping, venomed thing that lives. And here we have the curses. If ever he have child, abortive be it. Prodigious and untimely brought to light, whose ugly and unnatural aspect may fright the hopeful mother at the view. All right, when the mother of his child sees like the aborted miscarriage that's going to happen, she should be frightened. All right, and that be heir to his unhappiness. And here we have the money point. If ever he have wife, let her be made more miserable by the death of him than I am made by my young lord and thee. Looking at her father-in-law and then previously her husband, who Richard also killed. My young lord, the husband, and thee, the father-in-law. She's cursing his future wife. Who is his future wife about to be?
Herself.
Okay, don't point at you, because what's going on, John Paul?
Herself.
Herself, exactly. It's a curse. She's cursing herself, and it's coming to rest on her. Okay, it's like crazy talk up here. So then Richard comes in. And they go back and forth a little bit. She's like, carry on the corpse, and the guys are like, yeah, carry on the corpse. And Richard's like, no, or I'll stab you. And they're like, okay, so we'll put the corpse down. I mean, they totally are overawed by him. All right. Now let's go down to the Richard's come in. I'm now in Act 1, Scene 2, line about 50. Richard's first words to her, not to the guys who are carrying the corpse: "Sweet saint, for charity be not so cursed." Okay. Charlotte, take Anne. Foul devil.
Foul devil, for God's sake, hence, and trouble us not.
Okay, sweet saint, foul devil. Are you starting to see the back and forth here? And this just continues. For thou hast made the happy earth thy hell. Once again, we have a double structure. Earth is happy, but you made it hellish, right? You're a sweet saint, you're an evil demon. I mean, it's just back and forth. It's almost like a musical number, all right, that they're doing. You're like, sweet saint, evil demon. You can almost dance it back and forth. That's the cadence. It's very, very, very quick and back and sort of, there's a special word for this, but I forgot what it was, so that won't help you. Charlotte, go ahead.
Filled it with cursing cries and deep exclaims, if thou delight to view thy heinous deeds, behold this pattern of thy butcheries.
Okay, she points to the corpse. Behold this pattern of thy butcheries. All right, like a dead person is a pattern of the butchery that Richard has. Okay, so we're going to skip all this horrible stuff. She says, the deluging of the blood from the mouth, the blah, blah, blah. And then Richard goes down to say, am I Richard? I forgot. Yes. Lady, you know no rules of charity, which renders good for bad, blessings for curses. Now we see the first implication of his turn. Okay, go ahead, Charlotte.
Villain, thou knowest nor law of man, nor law of God, nor man. No beast so fierce, but knows some touch of pity.
But I know none, and therefore am no beast.
Oh, wonderful one. Devils tell the truth.
Okay, so we then look at the structure that's happening here. You know no rules of charity, which renders good for bad, blessings for curses. So now we're into the blessings for curses section, all right? And then she's like, blessings for curses, nothing. You don't acknowledge the laws of God or man, all right? And what is the thing which acknowledges the law, does not acknowledge the laws of God or man? Like Aristotle says, if you live outside the laws of God or outside the laws of man, I don't actually know if I ever taught you guys this because we never read Beowulf together, did we?
Yeah, we did.
Oh, yeah, we did. Okay, so outside the laws of God or man, you have to be a beast, right? Only a beast or a god can live outside human laws. So there's all of this literary illusion which is coming in, right? Shakespeare knows everything, basically, which has caused some people to doubt whether Shakespeare's actually Shakespeare. It isn't just 5 or 6, 100 other guys who know a lot of stuff making things up, which of course is nonsense. Shakespeare wrote Shakespeare the way that Homer wrote Homer and Virgil wrote Virgil. Human genius is in fact possible. Shakespeare obviously just had a really, really remarkable education. But if you look at what they read at like the grammar schools in Stratford upon Avon, where he's from at his time, they read some really remarkable things. They read like Juvenal and Hesiod, and they translated lots of Latin. They even learned a little bit of Greek. They read all these like wonderful histories. They read all kinds of Homer and Virgil. So all of this stuff, basically a lot of the stuff that you guys have read, Shakespeare read those things. So this reference here to the beast, all right, is a clear reference to the thing which lives outside the laws of human nature. Outside the laws of human nature, you must be either a beast or a god. He is clearly not a god, all right? But I know none, therefore I'm no beast, all right? She says, oh, wonderful when devils tell the truth. All right, let me see here. And go down to line 81 or 2 about this diseased infection of a man, which is an amazing line.
Vouchsafe diffuse infection of a man, of these known evils, but to give me leave, by circumstance to curse thy cursed self.
Fairer than tongue can name thee. Let me have some patient leisure to excuse myself. I'm going to tell you why I'm not as super guilty and super evil and psychotically what did you just call me again, woman? Infection? Yeah, I'm not as infective as you think. All right, so that's what he means by this. And?
Fouler than heart can thank thee. Thou canst make no excuse current but to hang myself.
Okay, if she had stopped there, the whole thing would have worked out much better, all right? You're like, okay, good. You're saying you can do absolutely nothing to like make anything better except rid the world of your horribleness. So if you really want to make things better, I got a rope right here. Would you just like, let's go with it? Why don't you just off yourself? Because that will definitely make things better. And if she had kind of stopped there, probably everything would have been better. But of course she did not. Okay, hold on. I lost my spot really quick. Okay. Now, then we have the reference to despair, all right? Because remember, the only thing that is unforgivable is despair, right? This is like, Shakespeare is very, very clear on like this is a Christian moral universe that he is dealing with. And he's not just putting forward pieces of it because he knows it's what people expect. The man functions within a tightly wound Christian moral universe, and if one does not think so, it's because one is unfamiliar with Shakespeare. Okay, so let's just go a little bit further in this back and forth because I think it's really useful. John Paul, would you be Richard now? By such despair I should accuse myself, and then Charlotte keep being Anne.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah.
By such despair I should accuse myself.
And by despairing shalt thou stand excused for doing worthy vengeance on thyself, that didst unworthy slaughter upon others.
Say that I slew them not.
Then say they were not slain. But
Okay, which is great, right? He's like, say I slew them not. She's like, well, so they're alive then? Because I'm not really following your logic here, buddy. Go ahead.
But dead they are, and devilish slave by thee.
I did not kill your husband.
Why then? He is alive.
Nay, he is dead and slain by Edward's hands.
In thy foul throat thou liest. Queen Margaret saw thy murderous falchion,
Which is a sword kind of a thing.
smoking in his blood. The which thou once didst bend against her breast, and that thy brother's feet aside the cliff.
I was provoked by her slanderous tongue that laid their guilt upon my guiltless shoulders.
So she's saying, in the past, when you threatened to kill Queen Margaret, she's the one that she knew your knife because she felt it once on her chest, and it was only beat off by your brothers. So then when she saw the knife again go into my husband, she was pretty clear that it was you. Is like what's kind of being said here, all right? And she's like, I was provoked by her slanderous tongue. I'm a simple man, so easily like raised to rage by slander. Because a good, solid man is raised to rage by slander. When someone slanders you, you get so angry. Go ahead.
Thou wast provoked by thy bloody mind, that never dreamest on aught but butcheries. Didst thou not kill this king?
Okay, let's pause for a second here. 105, Anne. Could one of you fix this? It's giving me a battery warning, so there you go. Okay. Thou wast provoked by thy bloody mind, that never dreamst on aught but butcheries. The only thing you dream of, buddy, is butchering good people. This is actually pretty solidly true. I mean, Anne's accusation is correct. Whenever he talks to us in those asides, he's like, not too long. He's like, bye-bye, princess, to the tower. It's funny how, how provoking youth, leads to long life, right? Which is, of course, an implication clearly for the text that he's about to off them, right? When he marries Lady Anne, he's like, I'll have her, but I will not keep her long. I mean, he is constantly meditating on butchery. Anne knows this. She is in full possession of her faculties, and yet he is so seducing in his wit that he manages to take this conversation and turn it into, over time, what comes later. Okay. Oh, we have to read the hedgehog part just because that's awesome. Richard says, I grant you. Okay, didst thou kill this king? I grant you, woman, I did that. Okay, go ahead, Anne.
Dost grant me, hedgehog? Then God grant me too. Thou mayst be damned for that wicked deed. Oh, he was gentle, mild, and virtuous.
Go ahead.
The better for the king of heaven that hath him.
Okay, what a response is this? He was gentle, mild, and virtuous. Yeah, I killed him. But obviously it's better that he's with the king of heaven now. I mean, it's so smarmy in its religiosity. Richard does this occasionally. There's another great moment of smarmy religiosity that we see in Richard. Does anyone remember what that is? Yep.
What does smarmy mean?
I'm going to go with the not C.S. Lewis. What am I thinking of here? What? Lewis Carroll, and it's a portmanteau word. Smarmy, meaning kind of miserable, slimy, and untrustworthy at the same time. It's kind of one of those. That's what I would say. I'm not the only one that uses the word smarmy, but it is kind of specialized language, let us put. Yes. Does anyone remember another occasion upon which Richard fakes piety?
Oh, when he's pretending to pray with the bishops.
He's pretending to pray with the bishops. And Buckingham comes and says, oh, sir, can we, impinge upon your prayer time to, have a little moment where we could try to get you to be king? He's like, now, I mean, I'm at my devotions, And then Buckingham says, after trying to convince him 3 times, Buckingham swears. He says, swoons, or zounds, or whatever it is. They say it zounds on stage, but actually it's probably supposed to be swoons. It's just a traditional stage thing. And it's a curse, right? Zounds or swoons means by the wounds of Christ. It's just a shortening of that statement, to by the wounds of Christ. So zounds or zoons. And so swearing by the wounds of Christ is, of course, like saying, son of a bitch, or something like that. It's shocking. And Richard is like, Buckingham, do not swear. That's terrible. Richard has broken 8 out of the 10 commandments, is like, Buckingham, do not swear. Do not take the name of the Lord in vain. How can you do this? I mean, he uses all of these fake pieties, and he's surrounded by a churchman on each side. He comes out to meet the men of the town. He has his Bible. He's like, Buckingham, that's shocking. Do not swear, Buckingham. That's totally unacceptable. I mean, he does this fake piety thing all the time. You had a question?
Pretty sure you broke all 10.
Possibly all 10. Okay. I don't know. All right. Let's not get into this. I mean, I'm thinking I've got 8 or maybe 9 out of 10 in my head right now. What is the one that I'm not sure of? I don't know if he ever yeah, okay, we're not getting into this. Okay, move on. We got other ways to go. Okay, so we see that we have, it's just the unbelievable gall of it, all right? So the better for the king of heaven that hath him, all right? And he is in heaven where thou shalt never come. And here we have the turn the conversation takes right here. Take it. Jump off.
Where are we?
Jumbo, you're very inspired this morning about
Let him
1:15.
thank me that hoped to send him thither, for he was fitter for that place than earth.
And thou unfit for any place but hell.
Yes, one place else, if you will hear me name it.
Some dungeon.
Your bedchamber.
Okay, that is the turn right there. If you think the unmitigated call of this guy. She's like, you're fit only for hell. And he's like, well, I'm fit for one other place. Your bed, woman. That's where I'm fit to go. So, It's like completely galling, all right? And by the end, he's got her, all right? So let me see. This is the turn where it happens, the rhetorical turn. How does he convince her? Like, okay.
What, he says that he didn't kill her husband?
Well, no, he kind of says he did. But he says he did it because why? It's all why. I did everything for this woman. That's what it was. For her beauty. I'm so in love with you that I killed everybody who was going to stand between you and me. And she, in the end, she buys it, right? Now, not every woman buys it. There's two kinds of Shakespearean women. The ones who buy the lies and the ones who are just incredibly tough and strong and like heroines, right? A lot of people will say, not a lot of people, but some dumb people think that Shakespeare just has a lot of like fluffy, loosey-goosey women in his plays. And he really does not. There's just two kinds of Shakespearean women, other than people like nurses and servants who just kind of come in and make comments and leave. There's always like some of those. But there's like weak-willed women who will find themselves, their emotions and their affections overborne, they overbear or like squish under their moral judgment, okay? So their moral judgment goes low and their emotions and their affections go high. And that's just what's happened to Anne here. And the other kind of woman, he's going to try this again. He tries this with Elizabeth. Convince your daughter to marry me. And she's like, yeah, okay, right. And they have this wonderful back and forth, and in the end, she immediately leaves and affiances her daughter to Henry Tudor immediately. She's like, we're done hesitating on this. You are not going with that guy. We're gonna York and Lancaster it up and make a new dynasty. Let's go. Like, absolutely not. She's totally unconvinced because she never loses sight of the moral gravity of Richard's actions. Anne knows his actions, but allows herself to be charmed by his words, which are in fact charming. He starts by shocking her, I belong in your bed, and then finishes by charming her. All right? So, I mean, the guy's like, nothing but guts over here.
I like Elizabeth.
Elizabeth is great. Yeah, no, she's really, really good. But I'm just saying, this is a really, really gutsy person. Okay, let's do this. Let's go to the end of this scene. I also really like the way that your text like gives you illustrations now and then when you're not sure what something is. Like, this is the illustration of the basilisk. So, which like comes up in the text because they're all insulting each other.
Wait, is it different than the basilisk lizard?
Yeah, basilisk lizard is what I'm talking about.
That's a snake.
No, it's a basilisk. Okay, let's move on. So he says, like he puts his ring on her, right? Look how my ring encompasses thy finger, even as thy breast encloseth my poor heart. Okay, like in the end. Okay, he convinces her that he did it all for love of her, convinces her to marry him. He puts a ring on her finger while the body of the dead father-in-law is right there. Okay, and then he sends the gentleman to bury the body. Anne leaves. Gentlemen go bury the body, and then he says to us some of the greatest lines ever. John Paul, try to make a killing out of this one. I'm expecting just declaim it for us, John Paul.
Was ever woman in this humor wooed? Was ever woman in this humor won? I'll have her, but I will not keep her long. What I that killed her husband and his father, to take her in her heart's extremest hate, with curses in her mouth, tears in her eyes, the bleeding witness of my hatred by. The
bleeding witness of my hatred, which would be the corpse of the dead father-in-law, right? There's a medieval tradition that when a murderer touches a corpse, the corpse bleeds. I mean, obviously corpses don't bleed because they're dead, but the people do that. If you are a murderer and you lay your hand on a corpse and the corpse bleeds, it's a witness against you. They're proving that you're a murderer. So Richard touches the corpse and the corpse bleeds. It's every sign is there for Anne to know that he is truly guilty. Go ahead.
Having God her conscience and these bars against me, and I no friends to back my suit at all, but the plain devil and dissembling looks. Yet to win her all the world to nothing. Ha! Hath she forgot already that brave prince, Edward her lord, whom I, some 3 months since, stabbed in my angry mood at Tewkesbury.
At Tewkesbury, yeah.
A sweeter and lovelier gentleman, framed in the
prodigality of nature.
Young, valiant, wise, and no doubt right royal. The spacious world cannot again afford.
Okay, so I slew one of the best men I've ever met, her husband, and I slew him in my anger at Tewkesbury, and his corpse, well, not his corpse, but the corpse of his father-in-law, who I just recently slain, was right there, giving evidence against me. Was ever woman in this humor wooed? Was ever a woman in this humor won? And then we have the money line, I'll have her, but I will not keep her long. What is the implication of that line, Charlotte?
She's gonna die.
She's gonna what? She's gonna die. He's gonna kill her when he doesn't have any use for her. I'll have her to my wife. Implication also, I'll have her sexually. Like, I'll take her virtue, but like, I won't keep her long. He's gonna kill her. The very moment that he is proposing and that he's putting his ring on the finger, then he turns and he talks to us. The person this speech is addressed to is us. We know his secret mind. This is one of the things that's very appealing about Richard. All right, he's totally creepy, but he's nefarious and plotting, and we're like his special little like friend that he talks to. He's like, I'll have her, but I will not keep her long. I mean, it's a secret. The people don't see it. The world doesn't see it. Only the audience sees it. And that is one of the reasons why Richard is so incredibly appealing. Okay, let's go a little further since this is our last day on Richard. What? It's a little appealing. All right? I mean, he's gutsy. Guts are appealing. And he does, in fact, have, like, courage. He has native courage. Like, lots of native courage. There's no implication that he isn't, like, super courageous on the battlefield. And he just, like, I mean, I don't know. I would call it an awfully courageous seduction of Lady Anne. I think it was pretty gutsy. I think you maybe have much more elevated moral instincts than I have, Maria. Maybe I would have been in some danger from Richard and you would not have been. You never know. Okay. So I'll have her, but I will not keep her long. Lady Anne and Richard, Act 1, Scene 2. Then I already talked to you about the Zounds, like the Wounds of Christ moment, which I think is in Act 1, Scene 3, when he comes out between the churchmen and he's like, no, Buckingham, don't curse. That's just so bad, Buckingham. Little Mr. Murderer, evil guy, is telling Buckingham not to, like, use the name of the Lord in vain. So there's all these pseudo-religiosity moments that Richard cultivates, and that would have been very sensitive to the London audiences of Shakespeare, who have, like, an ear for that kind of thing. Now let's go to another Richard and Queen Elizabeth, Act 4, Scene 4, that back-and-forth debate with all of the literary devices that it implies. So this is another Anne version, except this time he's losing, okay? And he's not quite sure if he's losing or not. I think this is about page, like, 245 or so.
I think we're up.
I know, but they were late, so we're going a little further. Because I can. Ha. So, on page 245, I'm in Act 4, Scene 4. Okay. So this is when he comes to her and says, listen, right? I really want to marry your daughter. And she's like, that's really funny, you psychotic murdering troll. You're not going to marry my daughter. Like, that's not going to happen. He's like, well, but really, it's just, and he offers these arguments, which are very, very compelling. And Elizabeth does not buy it. And remember, he's not seducing her. He's telling her, like, please give me your daughter. He's trying to convince her that the one true peace will be maintained when York and Lancaster get together, that if he marries Elizabeth of York, we could finally have, like, an end to warfare and an end to all these problematic elements. She's like, so who should I send as messengers for your love suit, my lord? The ghosts of her dead brothers, maybe, that you killed? Remember, the princes in the tower are Elizabeth of York's dead brothers. She's like, I got those guys. Or what about the ghosts of, like, I don't know, her father? Or what about, like, her uncles? I mean, all of the ghosts of all of her relatives that you have killed, should I send them to be your love messengers? Is that what you want from me? Right? So she is just completely not buying any of this.
What mother would, like, give up her daughter
Well,
to someone whose wife just...
If you think about it, though, queens are used to making compromises for peace. And if you think that by marrying your daughter to this, like, scary person, and he says, look, I killed her brothers, is true, but I'm going to raise up new heirs to your family line. We will have peace, and in your daughter's body there will be new children. Right? That's the idea. From your bloodline and your daughter's body, she and I together will make new kids that will bring peace to this country. So maybe you hate me, maybe you hate everything I did, but peace is possible. It is a compelling line of reasoning, all right? So if you think it's all just about personal, it's all like, but it's not about the state, but queens are used to making compromises for the state, and that is an option here. And so it is an appealing line of reasoning to Elizabeth, but she knows, even if that were possible, he'd have to be repentant. And he's not repentant, right? He's an evil, slimy scourge of God who is not repentant. Therefore, even if it were possible to save the situation by sacrificing my daughter's happiness for the happiness of the future kingdom, I can't do that, because he's a slimeberry, and that's just how it is, right? And she never loses track of that as an understanding, right? Look at this on page 349 for me. This is Act 4, Scene 4, line 265. Richard says, I'm on page 239, Act 4, Scene 4, line 266, actually, technically, line for Richard. Then know that from my soul I love thy daughter. And Queen Elizabeth says, my daughter's mother thinks it with her soul. What do you think? That thou didst love my daughter from thy soul, and from thy soul's love didst love her brothers, and from my heart's love I do thank thee for it. All right? Be not so hasty to confound my meaning, and I mean that with my soul I love thy daughter, and do intend to make her queen of England. Well then, who dost thou mean shall be her king, on line 275, and then we turn the page. Even he that makes her queen, who else should be it? What, thou? Even so, how think you of it? How canst thou woo her? All right, and Richard says to Elizabeth, well, I was going to learn that of you, so tell me how to woo your daughter. And Elizabeth says, and wilt thou learn of me? Send to her then, Elizabeth, this is Act 4, Scene 4, line 284. Queen Elizabeth says, send to her by the man that slew her brothers a pair of bleeding hearts, thereon engraved Edward and York. Then haply will she weep. Therefore present to her, as sometime Margaret did thy father, steeped in Rutland's blood, a handkerchief, which say to her did drain the purple sap from her sweet brothers' bodies, and bid her wipe her weeping eyes withal. If this inducement move her not to love, send her a letter of thy noble deeds. Tell her thou didst make away with her uncle Clarence, her uncle Rivers, and I, for her sake, made quick conveyance of her good Aunt Anne. All right? So, go and send to her the blood of her brothers, and then send her a handkerchief soaked in the blood of your other murderers, and then remind her that for her sake you killed her aunt, who was your previous wife. I mean, Elizabeth is not having any, right? She's like, there's no way that this is going to work out, right? Let me see here. I'm trying to think. There's another one. Oh, that's just like so marvelous. Okay, go here on page 245. About line 360, this back and forth that they have. Richard says, infer fair England's peace by this alliance. All right, marry her to me and England will be at peace. All right. And Queen Elizabeth says, which she shall purchase with still lasting war. All right. That at her hands, or tell her that the king thus, the king that may command entreats. And Elizabeth says that at her hands, the king's king forbids, all right? Like the king of kings forbids any kind of interaction of this sort between the two of you. Say that she shall be a high and mighty queen, Elizabeth, to veil the title as her mother doth, all right? To hate the title of queen as her mother hates it because of all the sorrow. Say that I will love her everlastingly, Elizabeth, but how long shall that title ever last? As in, how long will she last in that title of queen before you kill her like you did her aunt, right? Sweetly into force, unto her fair life's end, Elizabeth. But how long fairly shall her sweet life last? I mean, Elizabeth is not having any. And in each line, you notice that Shakespeare picks up the thing, right? I shall love her everlastingly, Elizabeth. But how long shall that title ever last? How long is ever for you before you kill her, all right? Sweetly enforce into her fair life's end. But how long fairly shall her sweet life last? There's two words picked up, all right? In Richard's 365, sweetly and life. And then again, Elizabeth takes fairly and sweet and life in her next line. The words that are like the money quotes of the previous line, they appear in the next line. It's how you jab back and forth, all right? I'll love you all my life. How long is, I mean, like, you know, so how long is your love in compared to my life? You know, oh, it'll be forever. How long is forever when like the evers for you last a really short time? I mean, it's a back and forth completely, and she takes the words from the one line and uses it in the next. It's absolutely fascinating. Okay, I just want to do one more thing, and then I'll let you guys go. This is from Buckingham's speech on All Souls Day. This, for me, is page 267. Remember, Buckingham is the one that helped get Richard on the throne, right? And helped eliminate all of his enemies. When does Buckingham stop supporting Richard? When does he stop supporting Richard? There's like a moment, a thing that Richard asked Buckingham to do, and Buckingham was like, well, maybe not. What's the most disgusting, nefarious, horrible thing that Richard does? For the Shakespearean audience. There's just no competition for this one. Wooing women over the corpses of their husband is bad, but there's a thing that's worse. What is the worst crime you can currently think of? Murder. What is the worst kind of murder that you can do? Against who? What kind of person? Well, I see what you're saying there. Family that's important. But what is the most innocent kind of person that can be killed? A child. Infanticide, murder of like innocent children, is one of the worst ever things. Like for the Elizabethan audience, that was like the worst thing ever. It was just the most horrible thing. The killing of the princes in the Tower. Richmond goes to Buckingham and he says, Edward still lives, by which he means the oldest of Edward's sons. So that was Edward IV, now this is Edward V. He's king for like 5 minutes and then they put him in the tower, okay? He says, Edward still lives. And Buckingham's like, he's in the tower, that's cool. And Richard's like, I'm having trouble sleeping because like these boys are kind of still alive. What do you think, Buckingham? What should we do about it? And Buckingham's like, my lord, let me consider the mission a while. Ta-da! And like takes off. And Richard is like, you have grown icy. Like you don't love me anymore. Like I can't trust you anymore. Your loyalty for me is iced over, right? And immediately he gets this guy Terrell, like this John Terrell fellow who's just a random murderer, to go to the tower and kill the princes. And Terrell says, this is the foulest crime that ever England has seen. He does it. He kills them. But he says it's the foulest crime that ever England has seen. So Buckingham will not kill the babies in the tower. Buckingham kills a lot of other people for Richard. Buckingham engages in all kinds of nefarious political this and that. So Buckingham is like, my lord, are you at your prayers? Like, the people entreat you to be their king. Buckingham does all that. When Richard says to Buckingham, kill the children, Buckingham's like, or there's the not kill the children option. It's just a little too much for Buckingham, this child killing thing. And he steps back, and of course immediately Richard turns on him, and that is when Buckingham has to run for his life. Now Buckingham has been arrested, he's gonna die, it's All Souls Day, and he's got some stuff to say. Charlotte, would you read for me? You're Charlotte. Sorry, Maria, would you read for me? For me, this is Act 1, Scene 1, just a few lines into that act. About line 10.
Act 1, Scene 1?
I'm so sorry, darling. Act 5, Scene 1.
Buckingham?
Yes.
His second thing?
All right, so I'm going to read the first thing, then you read the second thing, which says, why then All Souls Day, okay?
Okay.
All right, the first thing for Buckingham. Hastings and Edward's children, Grey and Rivers, those are the Queen's brothers, holy King Henry, right, and thy fair son Edward, Vaughan, and all that have miscarried by underhanded, corrupted, and foul injustice. If your moody, discontented souls, he's speaking to all the dead people, if your moody, discontented souls do through the clouds beyond behold this present hour, even for revenge, mock my destruction. This is Old Souls Day, fellow, All Souls Day, fellow, is it not? Charlotte, could you eliminate the low battery warning right there that I'm about to get? Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Maria.
Why then All Souls Day is my body's doomsday. This is the day that in King Edward's time I wished might fall on me when I was found false to his children or his wife's allies. This is the day wherein I wish to fall by the false faith of him I trusted most. This All Souls Day to my fearful soul is a determined despite of my wrongs. That high all-seer that I dally with hath turned my famed prayer on my head, and given in earnest what I begged in jest.
Okay, that high all-seer that I dallied with has turned my fiend prayer, my imagined prayer, on its head, turned it over, and given in earnest what I begged in jest. He's giving me for real a Death and All Souls Day, which I begged for jest for Death and All Souls Day. And then we have this amazing money line. Go ahead, Maria. Thus doth he force.
Thus doth he force the swords of wicked men to turn their own points on their masters' bosoms. Now Margaret's curse is fallen upon my head. When he, quoth she, shall split thy heart with sorrow, remember Margaret was a prophetess. Come, sirs, convey me to the block of shame. Wrong hath but wrong, and blame the due of blame.
Wrong hath but wrong. All right, wrong produces only wrong, and blame produces the due of blame. What's due for blame, okay? So lead me to the block of shame, because I've deserved it, all right? That's like what's happened right here. Buckingham has repentance. Let's go right back to one line here. Why then is All Souls Day is my body's doomsday? Why is it his body's doomsday? Charlotte? But why is it not his total doomsday?
Because his soul
His soul will what? What's going to happen to his soul, John Paul?
go to hell.
I mean, are we convinced it's going to go to hell? He said it's my body's doomsday, not his soul's doomsday.
He's thinking because he's repenting.
He's repenting. Always in Shakespeare there is this distinction, okay? Just like when the ghosts of Richard, the ghosts come to Richard and come to Henry Tudor, and they say, despair and die to Richard, and they say, fight hard and overcome and do your thing with the kingdom to Henry Tudor. Shakespeare always believes that despair is the worst possible crime. So, Buckingham does not despair. He knows it is his death day. He knows he deserves it. He knows he's going to receive punishment. But he also has hope for redemption because he knows the truth of the crimes that he did. Can you hit the stop for me here?